Morning, everyone. So, yes, the Rwanda bill passed Parliament after midnight, in the early hours of this morning. So it's passed into law now. So, in terms of, first of all, the differences between the bill now and the bill as it was originally presented, there's not really a lot of difference. Essentially, the government have agreed that Afghan asylum seekers who helped the British Army in Afghanistan should not be sent to Rwanda, which was the absolute least. It still notes the case that any ordinary Afghans who are fleeing the Taliban, which the Tories accept is an unsafe regime, if they come here, because there are no safe routes for Afghans, by the way, we have not actually set up a corridor for Afghan asylum seekers. So the government are still accepting that Afghanistan is unsafe. Yet if anyone comes from Afghanistan fleeing, then we can still send those to Rwanda. So basically, yeah, the only concession is if they actively helped the British Army, like working as interpreter or something like that, then they won't be. And even then, it would not surprise me if someone ended up going there. Now, in terms of what happens now, in terms of why it happened, by the way, it was simply this. Rishi Sunak basically shut the doors. He said, you're just going to keep on voting until it passes. And the House of Lords, I mean, they're trapped between one of two positions. First of all, basically, the House of Lords is full of people whose bones are basically dust at this point. They're in the average age is in its 70s. That's the average age. So there's plenty in there. And also bear in mind, on average, the Tory peers are younger because most of them were elected, like it's not really elected, but you know what I mean, appointed, shall we say, earlier, because we've had 14 years of Tory government. So we haven't had very many Labour peers go into the House of Lords. So basically, you're talking 80, 90-year-olds having to stay awake long enough to keep going, no, this is rubbish. And that's not really not going to happen. So the only other thing the Lords could have done was to have killed the bill altogether, but they don't do that because they're unelected. So it's going to pass in pretty much the form Rishi Sunak wanted. So what's the process now? So Rishi Sunak says flights will take off in about 12 weeks. And many members of the public may think, well, hang on a minute. He says everything's ready. Why does it take 12 weeks? So the reason it takes 12 weeks is because of the legal process now. So the process as stated by the government is they say they've already identified 350 asylum seekers. So they're going to send them deportation letters. Now, I think they also said, although don't quote me on this one, I think they've said to stop, because people have said, so what's going to happen now is asylum seekers who think they might be vulnerable are just going to disappear, which puts them at greater risk of slavery. Okay, because, you know, then people who are basically going to be harboring them can say, oh, yeah, I'll hide you from the authorities. No problem. You have to do exactly what I say now. So this is actually increasing people's vulnerability to slavery. They always use the term modern slavery. Can anyone explain why do they use the term modern slavery? Why isn't it just slavery? Slavery is slavery, isn't it? Anyway, so the process is, I think the government are just going to detain the ones anyway, so they can't hide. They're going to send them a letter saying, you're going to Rwanda. Those people will then have 8 days. Now, I'm assuming all this means working days, by the way. 8 days to respond. In other words, appeal. Then the government will consider the appeal. And they say that will take several days. I mean, let's say that's a week. I don't know. Several days could be almost anything. Usually several means 4 or 5, doesn't it? So we'll say about a week. And then if the government says, no, your appeal's unsuccessful, which it probably will, then the victims, as I will call them, have another 7 days to lodge a final appeal. That goes to a tribunal. Then the tribunal will hear that case. That could take up to 23 days, according to the government. So when you add all of this up, you know, the sending the letter, the 8 days appeal, 8 days to appeal, the several days to hear the appeal, the further 7 days to lodge a final appeal, the 23 days, all that, it adds up to about 11 weeks. And Rishi Sunak says he expects flights to go between 10 and 12 weeks. So that accounts for the time. So what was I now? Oh, someone just put a comment there. Average age of 70. I think it's average age of 70 something in the House of Lords. Surely Bojo's 23-year-old is not a daughter. It's not allegedly his daughter, by the way. Let's scotch that one. But his third, he's actually 30. His 30-year-old whatever would have brought that down a bit. No, because the House of Lords is absolutely packed to the rafters. Despite the fact that the Conservatives have consistently said, oh yeah, the House of Lords is too bloated. They have massively, and Boris Johnson was the worst of them. The House of Lords is huge to the point where it's massively outnumbers the House of Commons, which means that by definition, whenever you get Tory Brexiteers talking about the unelected nature of the EU, which is not true, our parliament is unelected. Over 50% of all parliamentarians are unelected. Simple as that. Quite a lot of them have never been elected to anything in their lives because only so many of them have been former politicians. But anyway, oh yeah, good comment there. Hang on. It says, why did they ban smoking when they could have just ruled that it was safe? Yes, very good. I mean, there's all the memes have been running for months on this, haven't they? You know, the government have basically just said, oh, the court's problem with Rwanda is it's not safe. So we'll just legislate to say it's safe. And it's like, well, why don't you do that for everyone then? Why are you wasting money? Why are we spending any money on healthcare? Why don't you just legislate to say that people aren't ill? Like, simple, isn't it? Ridiculous. Anyway, where was I? Yeah, so in terms of the process, that is the process. So Rishi Sunak reckons he's going to have a flight in the air by July. Now, despite Nigel Farage going, oh, I don't think there'll be any flights. I'll tell you what I think. So I've seen various thoughts because we have to think, how does this play into the general election? How does it play into the general election? So I've seen some people suggesting that Rishi Sunak plans to have a steady stream of flights over summer, then have his election in autumn, which is what we're expecting. I can point to flaws in that plan. The first of which is there was a report, I think it was in the Times or the Sunday Times recently in the last couple of weeks, where they were asking Home Office officials involved in this. And those Home Office officials, they are of the opinion, obviously they don't know what their political masters are planning, but they are of the view that everyone understands they can't actually send multiple flights. They can't do it. It's not, because of the legal, there still will be legal challenges. They're not cutting out all of the legal process. It's just that, what the government have had to do is to try and identify asylum seekers where the legal process is least likely to protect them. So there's only so many, and of course, again, because some of these asylum seekers will now disappear underground, so the Home Office won't be able to track them. You know, they'll only have so many, but I don't know how many that is, right? So the Home Office does not believe they're going to be able to have this steady stream of flights taking place over summer anyway. So what their understanding is that there's going to be a flight to show that they can do it, and then the election. Now that to me suggests a July election, because if you're going to have a flight in July, like you can't have the election, like ordinarily you'd think, have the first flight take off, then call the election. But if you do that and the flight takes off in, say, mid-July, then you call in the election for it doesn't even matter whether you're calling it for August or early September. Like that's over the summer period where loads of people are on holiday, including Tory activists. So they're all on holiday when Sunak wants them to be door knocking, which is like, no. Also, I don't think they're really going to go out, even when they're not on holiday, over summer door knocking for this absolute tit of a man. So there's a question there about which airline is it. So we'll come to that in a moment. So let me go my train of thought here. The other problem I have, so let us imagine that they managed to detain about 300 people and they managed to, you know, the appeals all fail. So they can actually send 300, which is all we can send anyway. We know that. Never mind identifying 350 people. We know we can only send 300 at most. In fact, I don't think there's even unless they send whole family groups, there isn't even the accommodation. I think we've got a few dozen homes set up for them in Rwanda. So we can't even send 300. We haven't got the accommodation for them. So Rwanda will just send them back. So anyway, let us say the flights do take place over summer, right? Let's say you've got a flight every couple of weeks, which is, again, impossible. If you look at the Rwanda agreement itself, it takes several weeks to get each flight cleared, right? But anyway, the other problem I have with this is it's not actually going to affect channel crossing numbers. Channel crossing numbers are now at record levels. We've actually just had news that some more people have died trying to cross the channel, which the Tories will shamelessly use to say, oh, this is why we're doing it, to save their lives. No, you're not. It won't affect channel crossing numbers at all in the slightest. But Rishi Sunak claims it's going to stop the boats. He says it's going to have that deterrent effect within days. So he's basically saying within weeks, he'll have stopped the boats altogether, right? Or down to, like, you know, a number that is as close to zero as makes no odds. So why would he have flights all over summer exposing the fact that actually the channel crossing numbers aren't being affected and then have the election in autumn? I don't think that makes sense. I think it makes more sense to have one flight or maybe two, but, you know, have a flight and then an election really soon after. So I think get ready for July. I'm not saying I'm certain on that, but I am thinking I just don't see the alternative making a great deal of sense. In terms of who's physically going to carry them, that is another interesting and huge unknown. Rishi Sunak claims a carrier has been arranged, but he won't say who it is. Now, I don't know whether people actually watched the debate in the House of Lords last night. I didn't watch the whole thing, but I watched the early bits. And one peer, I can't remember who it was. It was a crossbench peer, so they're not a member of any party. They said this. They said, oh, the government claims it's got a carrier, but they won't say who it is. And they basically called Rishi Sunak a liar. Apparently, you can do that in the House of Lords. But in terms of who the carrier is, that is interesting, isn't it? Because if it's a commercial airline, try and consider the consequences for them. First of all, they could find customer backlash. They could find that people boycott them. Second of all, it's been pointed out they could be prosecuted by an international court. Because although government ministers can't be prosecuted for breaking international law, a private business can. I mean, I've said this throughout. It's all right, Rishi Sunak getting away with breaking the law, but what about the pilots? What about the people who own the plane? They could be prosecuted. And there'll be a lot of motivation for international humanitarian groups to do that, to prevent other countries thinking they can do something like this themselves. Because remember, the only thing that's going to stop the Rwanda plan really now is the fact that the Tories are going to lose power. Labour have said they're not only going to stop the Rwanda plan immediately, but they're going to repeal this bill. It's not just that they're not going to use this Rwanda safety, or it'll become I don't know what it's called exactly. I call it the Rwanda safety bill. It's not its full title. But the act of Parliament, as it will be at the end of this week, Labour are going to repeal it. They've said they're going to repeal it. So it's not even like they won't use it and it'll stay on the statute books. It's going to be gone. But that is the only thing that stops us carrying on. What is to stop another country going, oh, well, they got away with it, so we'll do the same thing? The only thing that can do it is international groups are going to have to prosecute this carrier to try and stop any other government who's got the same idea having an easy way to do it. Ed Catflat, £2, saying it'll be Rwanda Air. Rwanda have already ruled that out. Rwanda have ruled out using their own airlines for this. Because they could be prosecuted. It doesn't matter, you know, don't imagine just because Rwanda itself is a human rights black spot. I mean, so are we now. They are still signed up to a lot of international laws, and their businesses are certainly. Because also consider another thing, right? Let us say there was like a public backlash in other countries. Well, the governments of those other countries could revoke the license of that airline to operate within their territory, couldn't it? So I just think it would be remarkable if they've actually found a commercial airline to do this, because surely it would be a massive, even though the government will be paying a lot of money for it, you know, the contract is very lucrative. Surely it's not lucrative enough for a commercial airline. And I think it very interesting that Sunak says he has a carrier, but won't say who. So I'm still wondering if ultimately it'll end up being the Ministry of Defence, like your government, because they can't, you know, a government thing. I mean, the airline will just, a commercial airline, it just sounds ridiculous for me for a commercial airline to be able to do this. Even if, I don't think we're going to be talking about a passenger airline, by the way. It'll not be like someone like British Airways. If it is a commercial airline at all, it will not be a passenger airline business. It'll be like a freight business or something. But yeah, I still struggle to see that. I struggle to see it. But I just, there are so many unknowns, but I'll tell you what I don't think is an unknown. One, I think the Tories want this to be a major talking point during the election campaign. Labour do not. Secondly, I do not think that the Tories want a long gap between the first flight taking off and the election, because the longer that gap is, the more time. It's not going to, like, the deterrence doesn't exist. It really doesn't exist. Even the Home Office have had to say, when questioned, they do not have evidence that there is a deterrent effect to this. So for, oh gee, my sound keeps going down. It's done this on Friday. So as far as like you know, Sunak and Cleverly and all these Tories going about the deterrent effect, I do not believe exists. I do not believe. And given that, like, it would be different if channel crossing numbers were just naturally down this year, let's say something to do with the weather. The fact that they're at record levels means that there's, you know, there's every chance that it will continue to be record levels over summer. So it makes absolutely zero sense to me that the government would, because Sunak claims he wants this steady rhythm of flights, then the election in autumn. I don't believe that. I don't believe he wants that. So it would be very, very interesting. But what I would suggest is, I would suggest you get ready for a summer election. Ivan Ambrose, 1999 super chat. Thank you very much. Says, deep down, King Charles won't want to sign the Rwanda bill into law. He speaks for the public on this, unlike the Tories. No one will. Most Tory MPs didn't really want it. But at the end of the day, people have to do as they're told. You know. But at the same time, it shouldn't just be down to Sunak this. Remember, this Rwanda plan has gone through 3 different Tory leaders and different Tory leaders as well. It started under Boris Johnson and 3 different Home Secretaries. So it should be remembered. This, don't associate this with Rishi Sunak. Associate this with the Conservative Party. The Conservative Party have done this. The Lords tried to amend it multiple times. The Conservatives said no. It's gone through 3 different Conservative leaders. It's gone through 3 different Conservative Home Secretaries. It needs to be associated with the Conservative Party, not an individual. That bloody sound keeps going down. It's doing my head in. But there we go. James Lee said the newsagents actually went to France and talked to people in the jungle. They said it would stop them from trying to get across the channel. I have a couple of issues with that. First of all, what they will have done is gone and said, here's the situation. Would that deter you? Right. But what did they say to them? Did they tell them the truth? Did they tell them the truth? Because I'll tell you something. Anyone crossing the channel today is not going to Rwanda. That is certain. In fact, the people crossing the channel now, because that's the thing, it's misinformation, isn't it? The Tories want to spread misinformation, but will they? First of all, who's going to tell asylum seekers that there's a good chance they'll be sent to Rwanda? Like, who's going to tell them? The people smugglers aren't going to tell them because they want the money. Who's going to tell them? No one's going to tell them. And also, even people who've got their interests at heart aren't going to tell them, because why would you? Because the chances are really low. Sorry, my microphone keeps mucking about. The chances are really low that anyone will be sent. But the weird thing is, all of the asylum seekers who are going to Rwanda are ones who crossed the channel a long time ago. Ones who are crossing now, ironically, can't be, because the government changed their guidance last year to I think it was sometime last July. And there's basically a date. If they arrive before that date, they're sort of like a legacy group, and there's a process for dealing with them, albeit slow. Anyone who arrived afterwards just gets detained. There's no process for dealing with them. So actually, if anyone did, I don't know why my microphone keeps going down. It's been happening the last couple of streams here now. I really don't know why. It's if anyone's telling the asylum seekers what the situation is now, they will tell them that, first of all, the chance of them being sent in is probably zero, because they go into a different category. They're a different category of asylum seeker. There is no process. They're just going to be detained indefinitely. I mean, realistically, until Labour come in and sort it out. All of the ones being earmarked for Rwanda, I mean, the Tories have said it themselves. They've already been earmarked. So think about the situation from the Deterrent point of view. Labour have said they're going to scrap the plan. They're not doing it. So as soon as the elections happened, it's finished. It's over, right? The Tories have already identified the asylum seekers that are going to be sent. So anyone new cannot be sent to Rwanda. Microphone. Sorry, I can't. This is annoying. It's a Windows set designed to balance all audio. Windows is bollocks. Do you know what? Windows 11 is particularly bollocks. I hate Windows 11. I've got Windows 11 on this. Windows 10 was fine. Windows 10 was perfect. This is bollocks. Anyway, I'll have to have a little play in that. I'm having all sorts of problems. Ever since I've got Windows 11, I'm having massive problems. Do you know what? I'm gonna say it. It's worse than Vista. I didn't have this many problems with Vista, you know. Vista was rubbish. This is appalling. Whoever designed Windows 11 should never work in software engineering again. But anyway, there it is. Can I increase volume in OBS instead? No, I'm not using OBS. But no, in actual fact, the volumes, from my point of view, is at max. Windows is bollocks. My anger won't fix it. My anger has fixed computer issues before. But I don't have a hammer handy at the moment. But there we go. Do I... sound isn't bad. It seems to drop and creep up on its own. That's because creeping up because I'm putting it back up, I think. But anyway, never mind. Which airline sending people to Rwanda? We don't know. Rishi Sunak won't say. He won't say. Are the NHS still using Vista? I don't even think they got round to Vista, did they? I don't know. But you know, I just never mind. Doesn't matter. Colin Baker, $4.99 super chat. Thank you to help Phil fix his sound. I will have to have a little play later. But I've no idea. The problem is I could change a setting and not know if it works. I have another problem. So to go on to a tangent, I have another problem with, like, because I play online games as well. And when I use Windows 11, so I'm having to do a lot of my gaming downstairs on my laptop, which is Windows 10. Because on Windows 11, it just randomly, you just lose control of your character. And apparently, it is a thing. And I've known it's like, and the fix recommended by Microsoft itself, who know it is a problem, is, oh, there's this like focus assist you can turn off or on or something. And it's like, no, this thing doesn't exist. You look it up. There's a focus function. There's no focus assist. Doesn't exist. So Microsoft coming up with this bastard. Anyway, what law rules aboard the plane? Well, international law. Once you're in, I mean, it's like anything. You know, the law that exists on a plane is the law in whose territory you are in. So when you're taking off, it'll be UK law. When you're in the air, it could be international law. When you're in Rwanda, it'll be Rwandan law. Got a couple of super chats. I've gone over them. I've mentioned them. Keep up, Graham. Last time I went to the doctor, I noticed they were still using Windows XP. I mean, that is dodgy because it's no longer supported. But yeah, no one in their right mind went to Vista. I only had Vista because I happened to buy a laptop while Vista was the thing, and it came with Vista. That laptop did not last very long, or at least not with Vista on it anyway. Is there a possibility of freedom of information request to find out the airlines? You could, but the process will take longer than they'll have to announce it anyway. I mean, there's going to come a point where it has to be announced. So, yeah, we will at some point have to know. Rachel Harris, £5 super chat. So 300 desperate people on a 737 with a couple of Home Office guard. What could possibly go wrong? There won't be 300 on any one flight. There'll just be a few. I say a few. It can't be literally 3 or 4. I don't know. Like, the way I would reason it, also on the one hand, it won't be a full plane because Rwanda, it'll take too long because the process is as well, because obviously I've gone through the process in this country. There's a process in Rwanda. So the process for actually sending them to Rwanda as part of the Rwanda agreement is I don't think even Ryanair will touch it, is the Home Office has to send a list to the Rwandan government, says, we want to send these asylum seekers to you. The Rwandan government, their own Home Office, checks through the list and goes, yeah, to that, no to that, right? So they decide. They have complete, they are not obligated to take anyone. We could send them a list of 300. They go, no, we don't like any of these. They won't, of course. They'll accept some. Then after that, and that's a 2-week process, right? That takes up to 2 weeks. Then once Rwanda said, yeah, we're okay with these ones, the government, the Home Office, has to then further send more details like medical conditions, things that were on their asylum claims, stuff like that. Basically, all the rest of the information has to be sent to the Rwandan government. That takes another week, according to the Rwanda agreement. So you're talking up to 3 weeks before the Rwandan government can even clear the people to go. So, you know, the idea of sending multiple a month, it's like, well, how does that happen then? You'd have to have like a staggered thing. Every week they'd have to send a new list of names. And it might be that the Rwanda government say, we're not going to put this many people on it. Fuck off. But there we go. Johnny Cophead, £2 super chat. Thank you very much. Tony Blairways. No. No well-known commercial airline, no passenger airline will do it. I'm certain of that. Well, I'm fairly certain. Who knows these mad days? Isn't it supposed to be a maximum of 300 a year? They'll mostly be sending some this way as well. I think it's going to be basically 300 full stop. If you look at the accommodation plan, remember, we don't even have accommodation for 300 right now because most of the homes that we built or we paid to have built have been sold. 70% of them been sold to local Rwandans. So I think there's only a few dozen homes anyway. So let us imagine you sent entire family units, right? So let's imagine 4 people to a home in Rwanda. I mean, you've only got like 150 or something there, haven't you? At most. So, yeah. Flying them also proves Sunak couldn't give a F about the green transition either. I don't think I would. No, I don't think I would say that. There's no other way to get them there. Like, you know, flying them there is the only way to get them there. I tell you what, I sometimes wondered on the early days of the Rwanda plan, would European countries even allow a plane to fly through its airspace for such a mission? Because that would stop it dead, wouldn't it? You can't just fly around, can you? Can you? I don't think you can. That'd be too far, wouldn't it? So, but obviously no one's raised this. So I imagine the European countries are not going to, maybe they can't legally stop it. I don't know. Or maybe they're just not going to. Sunak wants the first flight blocked, then he could call a snap election with one issue and a nice 3-word slogan. I'm not sure at this point, because there's no way to blame anyone if it gets blocked now. There's no way to blame anyone. No, I think they are expecting to get a flight in the air. They just cannot have a long period of time between a flight taking off and the election, because it will highlight the fact that it's not stopping the boats. That is what I would say I am sure of. Final super chat. Thank you, Nicholas Fleece. 5 Swiss francs. Thank you very much. We'll have to call it there. You say you could fly around European countries. African countries would be more difficult as Rwanda's landlocked. Yeah. But even flying around, I mean, I remember when we used to fly to Florida, we had a stop off in Canada every time we used to go when I was a kid. I mean, isn't there like, it's a long way round, but I don't know. We'll go with Graham on this one. He's the travel expert, but we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much. Anyway, thanks for coming on, everyone. Have a great day. And until next time, I'll see you later.